everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I wanted to do a book tag video, and specifically the mid-year freakout tag. So this is a tag where you sort of check in with your reading so far in the year, at the halfway point, to look back on some of your reading and some of your plans for the second half of the year. So I thought that I would do my own for this year so far. First question is best books you've read in the year so far. So I'm gonna go with two books, one non-fiction and one fiction book. My fiction choice is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. It is about Mary Catherine, her sister Constance, and their uncle who live together in this old mansion, and they're very separated from the rest of the community, and the reason for that is because their family died from arsenic poisoning, and one of the members of the family is accused and suspected of having murdered them. So the book itself is really about fear and the way that fear influences choices and behavior and actions, and how fear can move in individual ways, and also how it can change a community's reactions, work within a group. So I thought that this was amazing, and it is most likely gonna be a favorite of all time, not just for the year. And the same could be said for the second book, which is Walt Disney, The Triumph of the American Imagination by Neal Gabler, which is a biography about Walt Disney. I think often seen as sort of the definitive biography of him, and there's a good reason for that. Neal Gabler does a fantastic job giving you all sides of a complicated person, from his childhood, how his family life influenced his choices later in life, how he was active in the war and then tried to make a living and find his career, how he grew in his endeavors, and how the company grew with him. This book is just a really well-balanced biography, giving you both the good and the bad. If you're at all interested in Walt Disney or his company, the things that they produced and how influential he was, not just in animation history and cinema, but also in the way the American identity was viewed and shaped in the 20th century. This is a must-read, I think. The second question is best sequel you've read in the year, and that would have to go to Dumb Witness by Agatha Christie. So I don't really read series that often, but I do really like the Hercule Poirot series, and this is, I think, the 14th book in the series. This is the story of an old woman. She's in an accident and she believes that one of her family members have tried to kill her. So she contacts Poirot, but he ends up getting to her after she's already dead. Just another enjoyable Poirot book. The only book in this series that I haven't enjoyed yet is the Big Four. Other than that, I think I've pretty much enjoyed all of the Poirot books I've read so far, and this is no exception. It's really enjoyable. It's funny. I like the setting within it, quite closed environment, and also to have the suspects be related or be very entwined with one another. Third question is new release you haven't read yet but want to. For this I'm gonna go with Snotgirl Volume 2. This is by Bryan Lee O'Malley and Leslie Hung. And this is a comic series that is about a fashion blogger who has a lot of allergies, which is the reason she's called Snotgirl. I really enjoy the fact that a comic book heroine has a common problem like allergies. She has some relationship problems and friendship problems and drama. She ends up being sort of entangled in something complicated and ominous. I'm looking forward to reading the second volume to sort of get more answers to how the first volume ended. But I love the drawing style. I really like the way that it plays with pop culture and just social media and things like that. The fourth question is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. For this I'm gonna go with 1000 Books You Should Read Before You Die, a life-changing list by James Mustich. So this is in the line of the 1001 books and movies and places to visit, etc. books. This is a book with basically a list of titles that are worth noting, and with each title there's like a short text about it. This book comes out on the 2nd of October, and it seems to have a slightly different approach to the list and the choices that are included in the list. So this book is described as not really following the canon of books, not to be specifically the 1000 books you should read to be well read or to have read the most influential books in the world. Rather, it seems to be more like a book lover's urging to others to read books that he thinks are really worth reading, to be more of an inspiration rather than being the definite list of books to read. The 5th question is biggest disappointment. Sadly, that is E.H. Shepard, The Man Who Drew Pooh by Arthur R. Chandler. So this is I thought that this was going to be more of a biography of E.H. Shepard, the man who illustrated Pooh, and also the Wind in the Willows books, among other things. He had a lifetime of work. This book is basically a coffee table book with a lot of his illustrations and work and some of the documents relating to his life, like diplomas and some photographs and things like that included, and some text to go along with it. So rather than being first and foremost a biography, it's more like a coffee table book with some biographical text. So that is the disappointment aspect, is that the book itself isn't really going very deep into his life. You don't really get a good sense of him. The text is very like point-based and very surface level, and I wished that there was more meat to the bone in this book. The 6th question is biggest surprise, and for that it is probably gonna be Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. So I tried to read this a couple of years ago and I just could not at all get into it. I didn't like the writing style, I didn't feel like there was much to it, but I recently read this in May and actually listened to it as an audiobook, and this is the translation by Lydia Davis. I just really liked the way that Gustave Flaubert examines the constraints of women of this time, women's rights and lack of rights, through Emma Bovary, who is a very unlikable character, but she is so feisty as a heroine, especially for this time. I feel like I enjoyed this book partly because I saw past the immediacy of the unlikability of her character and the very floral style of Gustave Flaubert's writing, and enjoyed thinking about the themes in the book. But also I feel like partly I enjoyed this so much because it sort of connected with some of the things I've read just prior to it. So for example, I read Les Miserables by Victor Hugo in the same month, and also reread Frankenstein. And so I feel like I'm starting to see some linking in the books that I'm picking up recently. The themes of women's rights and lack of rights and freedom, and how their choices is so shaped by societal expectations, and how much a woman of this time suffered if she strayed from the path. That sort of theme I feel like I've seen a lot in the books I've been picking up recently, and so I think partly I enjoy this book just because I've read it at the right time. The 7th question is favorite new author. For that I'm gonna go with Samantha Schweblin, who wrote Fever Dream. This was her debut novel. It is a story of motherhood and the fears that is sort of interwoven in that dependency, that relationship of dependence. And I thought that the book itself was really good and very well executed for a debut. Really liked the way that she played with narrative form and how she played with pacing in really effective ways. So she is coming out with a short story collection in January next year, or it is being translated into English and published, called Mouthful of Birds, I think, that I'm really looking forward to. I feel like this is going to be an author that I follow and really enjoy sort of seeing the progress of her writing. The 9th question is newest favorite character. This is one of the contenders, and it is Miss Marple. So I read The Murder at the Vicarage by Agatha Christie earlier in the year, and it is the first book in the Miss Marple series, and it was my introduction to Miss Marple. Miss Marple is obviously the well-known detective who is an elderly woman, and she is very in with the gossip in the town where she lives, and so she solves the murder in this book through her way of listening in on all the gossip and knowing everything about everyone, and also just lurking and spying on people outright. I just really like her approach to her detective work. She isn't viewed as a threat by the people around her. Really liked her from the get-go. The 10th question is books that made you cry. I think this is probably the only book that has made me cry this year, and it is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. This is an epic book of tragedy and horror and poverty, and it is called Les Miserables, so you get that it's gonna be about misery, and it is so filled with tragedy and heartbreak. But the thing I cried about was Jean Valjean, and his the ending of the book is very focused on him. That had me in tears almost constantly for 100 pages. The 11th question is books that made you happy, and this was easy because I do read a lot of books that I enjoy and a lot of books that made me happy or smile, but this one is definitely a standout in that department, and it is The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. It is the story of 4 women, completely strangers at the beginning of the book. They decide to rent a villa together in Italy for an entire month. It is very inviting, and it is warm, and the way that the nature is described in blooming words, and also how the characters open up inch by inch over the book is just, it is so heartwarming and fun. So this is definitely one that made me really happy, and that I would highly recommend if you're looking for such a book. If you're looking for a feel-good book, this is the one. The 12th question is favorite book to movie adaptation you saw this year. None, because apparently I haven't watched any book to movie adaptations this year, and I haven't actually watched that many movies this year. The 14th question is most beautiful book you bought so far this year. This one is a standout because it is a coffee table type book, and it has glossy pages, and it is a Disney book. They drew as they pleased the hidden art of the Disney's golden age, the 1930s, by Didier Ghez, and it's basically 4 illustrators for the Disney company that did concept art, I think. So they their artwork isn't as visible in the finished product, but they were really influential in shaping a lot of the work that Disney did in this period of time. Partly text, partly illustrations and photographs. Like this. I love the style of these animators and artists that worked with Disney, especially from the Golden Age. The last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I went with 2 biographies that I would really like to get to before the end of the year. First is a book that I've read a big chunk of, but I have not been able to finish yet, and it is Beatrix Potter, The Extraordinary Life of a Victorian Genius by Lear. I have for sure mentioned this in previous videos, but I think I might even have mentioned this in my mid-year freakout tag last year. I would really like to pick this up again, start from the beginning, because it's been too long since I last read it, and read through the entire book, because I do find Beatrix Potter a really interesting person person. I love her artwork. The other book that I wanted to mention is a book that I've actually just recently picked up, and it is Snödrottningen by Henrik Wivel. This is a biography about Selma Lagerlöf, which is the original title for this is in Danish, so it has been translated to Swedish. I'm not sure if it is available in English, but I picked this up in a secondhand bookshop a week or two ago. I love the books that I've read by Selma Lagerlöf so far, and she's a really interesting character, but she is a very significant literary figure in the Swedish literature history, and I don't really know that much about her life, aside from what I've learned about her through her diary, but I'm looking forward to learning more about this woman who was so influential and see some parallels to her fiction writing. So those are all of the questions for the mid-year freakout tag. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you read any of these books and what you thought of them. I hope you're having a really good day, and I will talk to you soon.